Previously on Logistics Business Conversations, we've explored why the yard has become one of the last major blind spots in the digital supply chain. In this episode, we're going to continue that conversation, but with a fresh perspective. Now, it's one thing to recognize the problem, it's another to solve it. So from appointment scheduling and gate management to real-time visibility and operational orchestration, we're going to be looking at what effective dock and yard management actually looks like in practice, the business benefits it can deliver, and how organizations can successfully implement it. And to help steer a course through all of this is Greg Braun. He's the Chief Revenue Officer at C3 Solutions.
Welcome to Logistics Business Conversations, the podcast exploring the ideas and insights shaping today's logistics industry. Featuring leading voices from across the sector, we examine key trends, emerging challenges, and the innovations driving the future of supply chains.
Well, hello, Greg, and thanks for joining us on Logistics Business Conversations.
Well, thanks for inviting me, Peter.
It's great to have you here at Multimodal in Birmingham. Now, I guess it's really important. If you want to know how to solve your customers' problems, you need to know what those problems are. Has your recent survey, the state of dock and yard, helped you identify some of those issues?
Well, it has, Peter, and thanks for bringing that up. Actually, I mean it's actually our second survey that we've done. We did one last year as well, and when I said we actually have an outside group do that for us, and they've surveyed around 150 operators, and last year and this year. So the interesting thing is that it's come back with, it's essentially confirmed what we've always known when we're out there in the field trying to sell yard management solutions, is that it came back, and I don't have all the numbers in front of me, but it was like 72% of operators that when the peak time hits, they fall back into manual, and they'll utilize overtime labor. And there was a small, like under 20% were using a system, which in some ways makes a lot of sense because, I mean, if you hadn't already planned for that peak and you're using a manual system, well, guess what?
People at it.
And if you haven't really bedded down the system properly, now the peak hits, they turn it off and they go to manual. So, but that to me is not that, unfortunate. It's disappointing in some ways, but it's not surprising. When, we sell a yard management and dock scheduling system, and it's extremely rare that we're going to be replacing an existing system.
So what do you're spotting it, enhancing it, teaching it to do it, whatever it's doing already?
Well, no, actually what we're doing is we're replacing, clipboards and two-way radios. And then on the scheduling side of things, what you'll see is fancy Google Sheets, sometimes actual written calendars.
Operating it within their own silos.
Yeah, completely. Completely. So again, one of the things we manage on the booking side of things, our large customers will have their buyers are going out buying product from their key suppliers. Supplier then has on the purchase order, it's very well indicated when they need to deliver that product by. So they ultimately they're calling someone or sending an email to say, hey, we need to get a booking time, and then that's what we're replacing. We're completely automating the process. We can even have it so that on large hauliers and so forth, they send an electronic data transmission which fits within certain parameters and can, automatically approve an appointment. Or they'll have their customer service people, rather than making that phone call, are now coming in on our portal, keying in the purchase order numbers. The system then will give them a strategic time slot. It just doesn't give them any time slot. It's not a first come, first serve kind of thing. And then it's all confirmed, and they can attach electronic paperwork and do all that kind of thing.
So that helps smooth the flow of traffic through the yard.
Yeah, and that is really key actually, because if you don't plan things properly, and you just have drivers show up whenever they want, it doesn't always work out that well.
So the implications of that is sort of idling time, queuing. It's not optimizing a fleet's use. It's not optimizing the warehouse dock.
No, exactly. And you raised some good points there. I mean, when you're talking about fuel utilization or just, excess carbon emissions, if you have folks just show up and it's somewhat paradoxical. We'll hear hauliers complain about, we don't want to have to make a booking. Well, okay, fine. Tell your driver to show up when he wants to, and he and everyone else will show up at the same time. Now he's in a big queue, and that truck is idling, and okay, but guess what?
Not exactly sweating the asset.
No, exactly. But you didn't have to make a booking though. Good for you. So
Yeah, well done.
so to get back to the survey, there was a lot of different findings like that. Disappointing, not shocking, right?
Yeah.
I mean, one of the findings were that 80% of the respondents would like to have an automated dock management system in place. 12% had a plan to do it. So again, and we do see that, unfortunately, in our area, that I call it the silver bullet syndrome. Like they'll call us up and say, please have a silver bullet that I can just buy.
Just
it's
solve all our problems
exactly.
overnight just by pressing buttons.
And I think that's unique to the yard, because when we're looking at the warehouse and we're looking at transportation management systems, no one would ever think that there's a magic wand.
It feels like that area of process optimization is a little bit more mature, and I think that could be symptomatic of the fact that it all takes place within four walls.
No,
It's
exactly.
more regulated, and
Exactly.
and I think the bottlenecks there are a lot easier to identify and resolve.
Yeah, and I think it ultimately comes down to ownership. It's historically, no one really owns the yard.
Right. Everything inside a warehouse, we know there's the operator of the warehouse falls within their domain. Outside of those four walls,
We'll often talk to companies when they're building a big new shed somewhere, and the very impressive technology and everything about it, and automated equipment and what have you. But no one's excited about building a big yard, right?
you must be.
Well, yeah. Yeah, I mean, obviously, we wouldn't have a business if people weren't
Yeah.
as bad at it as they are. But
They don't love it because they don't think it's strategic. Or
Well-
they think they could use it as maybe a competitive advantage.
well, I mean, let's be honest. In a big yard, in some ways, it's not always the case, but in some ways, it kind of is it's kind of a representation of inefficiency, right? I mean,
Mhm.
because if it was a perfect world, these trucks would come in, they'd get unloaded, and they'd leave, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, and that's not realistic. However,
No, show me a
But-
perfect world. Greg.
yeah, exactly. So what a crowded yard is a reflection of is that we didn't really have a good plan. We just dropped that trailer and we'll figure out what to do with it later. I mean, that's a very crude way of putting it, but that's
And there needs to be space to store that.
Yeah.
Really.
now, and it's interesting as a
Yeah.
company. I mean, we're a Canadian company, so we started doing business in Canada and the US. And let's face it, over there's a lot bigger spaces. One of our first big customers was in Texas, which, everything is bigger in Texas. And in this case, it was truly the case. We start coming to the UK. We start doing business in the UK. Actually, in 2002, we started our first customer in the UK. And everyone would go, oh, yeah, well, we don't really have the big yards here. I don't know if we really need a system. As a company, it was great for us because it made us actually see the problem as it is. Because by having less space, we didn't have the luxury of parking trailers. Because in a massive yard in Canada or in Texas, you just park up the trailer. We'll deal with it later.
That was
right?
plan B, but
Yeah.
the luxury of plan B.
You don't have the
that's
luxury.
right.
So right from the beginning, we had to be very sensitive to managing the flow of trailers, right? So again, it all comes back to what I mentioned earlier. If you don't have the plan, if you don't know why that trailer needs to be there and where it needs to go, you're going to have it's going to be tough, right? And so it's very important to have that pre-advice information so that when the vehicle arrives, you know what to do with it. And systemically now, you can direct that trailer to the right spot, make sure that you handle it, process it, unload it, what have you, as quickly as possible so you can get it out. You don't want it to sit. You don't have the luxury of allowing it to.
You don't want it to sit outside the yard or in the yard. You don't want it to sit at the dock either.
I mean, some of our biggest customers started off in the courier business and the postal business. So those had very unique circumstances or scenarios where a vehicle would be coming from a region, a far off region, and they would have, like, say, first class mail on board. So they would have a cutoff point. They would have to arrive. They would have to get unloaded. They would have to be reloaded to get back out to make their first class mail deliveries.
There's room for optimization in the yards, and you've come up with a solution to help customers with that issue to smooth things along.
Mhm.
How does that work in actual fact, in terms of implementation?
Where we optimize that is there's a couple different elements where optimization is required. I've been kind of bemoaning here about parking trailers. I mean, they get parked, right? So we can say what we will that it's a failure of some point. It's reality. Operations need to park up trailers. So we want to minimize that parking time, right? We want to make sure that we can process those trailers as quickly as possible. So some of the KPIs there is we want to make those trailer turnarounds as effectively as possible. So that's a key area. We also want to have the visibility of where are those trailers, precisely what's in the trailers. So that's a whole visibility end of things. And that, by the way, getting back to our survey, that was the number one point customers have today still, companies have, is getting that visibility. And then the one area that we've always focused on as a company is optimizing the labor utilization. And when I say labor utilization, what I'm referring to now is what we call the shunt drivers, the dedicated yard drivers that are moving the vehicles around. That's a very big cost factor for most of our customers, because on these bigger yards, you could be running 4 to 5, even more shunters at one time. So it's a very key element to optimize the cost aspect there. So if we look at all those points, that's how we, in the yard itself, that's where we add automation and efficiencies. On the booking side of things, obviously, again, if we don't optimize the arrivals of those bookings, if we just let products show up as, first come, first serve, it causes real inefficiencies on the dock itself, right? And perfect example, and a lot of our customers will do this, that say receive a lot of containerized goods where that's usually floor-loaded product. You don't want to be bringing in floor-loaded product at the end of a shift, for example, or you want to make sure you minimize the number of floor-loaded containers that you're going to unload in a shift. So to do that is going to help optimize the productivity of your workforce. So those are the kind of things that every operator kind of knows that, and they try and do that, but
hard to spreadsheet it.
Exactly. So it's usually, a good operator is going to be able to do it, but things happen, things get busy. We've booked in 5 containers here. We know we should only really book in 2. And it's like, so I mean, those are the kind of things that's a no-brainer. The system just, like, the rules prohibit you.
You've talked about some of the very sort of obvious implications of an inefficient yard. What are some of the hidden problems, or should you say hidden costs that lay behind an inefficient yard?
When we're talking to customers that are, say, in the food business, well, I'll say food business, and also, I mentioned parcel and courier business.
Yeah,
it's the perishability of products, right? So
chilled stuff and
chilled stuff.
Shelf life.
So your fruit and veg, it's very sensitive. Obviously, if I mentioned dwell times earlier, we could be talking about a lot of times if a haulier brings over a trailer, there's an agreed upon service level where you can have that trailer for so long, after which I'll bill you for it. So we want to minimize that cost factor. But the hidden cost, well, it's not that hidden probably for the operator, is that if that perishable good sits there too long, that's an issue. And then on the other side, on the courier side, if Apple's just launched a new iPhone, and that trailer now, someone kind of misplaced it for a while, and it doesn't make it to the Vodafone shop
on day one of the launch.
That's crucial. So I mean, probably most of our customers wouldn't say that's hidden, but that's not necessarily something that comes as front of mind right away.
So beyond just scheduling, how much does your solution help the customer? Where does it reach?
Well, I mean, there's the actual appointment taking process. That's, we've mentioned that a few times. Some of the other elements where we add value is there's always paperwork involved, right? So we can, in most cases, automate, or not automate, but we can download that. There's usually a PDF or some kind of electronic version of that.
Get that sort of processing.
So we can eliminate the actual paper itself. Yeah. Some of the other things that we're doing as well with the appointment is we have a driver collaboration product where the driver, from the moment that he's given that appointment. So obviously there's, as I mentioned earlier, there's a customer service rep that's going to make the appointment, right? Mm-hmm. Then ultimately a dispatcher is going to give that shipment to a driver. And so now the driver's got he'll be given his workload probably electronically. And what we do in our system then is we'll give that driver the option to kind of subscribe to the delivery. So he's giving visibility to our customer to say, okay, I'm on my way, and I'm going to be delivering your goods today, type of thing. So as they get closer, they'll be able to indicate any challenges they might be having. If all goes well and they show up, they can now check themselves in when they arrive at the distribution center. And the other good thing is once they've arrived now, we can stay in constant contact with that driver. And that's all part of that booking. So, because a lot of our customers have what we call kind of an in-yard workflow. So there's many different things it's one thing to just arrive. We want to bring them to the bay, but there could be a few other things that happen in between, right? So it, maybe as simple as deliver your deliver your paperwork, if they haven't, electrified all of their paperwork, they may still have to bring that paperwork to a transport office. If it's a live unload, maybe they'll request that the driver brings his keys in. All these different elements within a workflow.
So the keys being the health and safety.
The health and safety, exactly. We're not going to start unloading your truck while you're sitting in there with the keys.
That's
So,
well, it's very reassuring to know all of that can be taken care of as well.
Because pre our system, most of our customers were already capturing the phone number from the driver, right, when it shows up. And ultimately, and it's one of our customers, oddly enough, actually, they had, again, very, very massive warehouses. They had people out, their whole job was just calling drivers.
Calling drivers ahead of their arrival.
Yeah. So when we presented this solution to them, normally we're looking at optimizing the gate and increasing the throughput at the gate and the whole, in our world, the concept of a manless gate is a big buzzword, and it's a big thing these days. This particular customer didn't want to take a person out of the gate. They still needed to have, for all kinds of reasons, they still wanted to have a person in the gate. So I'm
get visuals on them.
There's all kinds of different reasons they had. So my comment to them was, well, how are we going to pay for the system now if you're not going to take a man out of the gate? They said, we didn't mention to you, we actually have a position in our warehouse. It's called a caller.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of these callers, and now we won't need them anymore.
No, absolutely not.
So, or we'll put them in areas where they're going to be much more productive than calling drivers and say, hey, your truck's ready to go now.
So implementation's taking place. You've got a best-in-class yard. You don't walk away from it, right? I guess it's honing and learning and incrementally improving and improving.
Yeah. I mean, our system, it's a workflow-based system. So we like to always tell our customers that we show up with a blank slate, right? Because our system is not a one-size-fits-all. It's what are your business processes? Our application specialists are going to sit down with you, help re-engineer your business process. And if need be, once we've all agreed that, this is the way we want the operation to run, we'll take those processes and then put them into the system. It's still an off-the-shelf product, but it's going to feel like a bespoke system.
So what would your customers need to do to make themselves ready for implementation? Is it a question of gathering their data and making sure the data is good data? They hand over their data to you. Can they trust you with that data? And obviously they can.
Yeah,
is the answer, Greg. But how do you assure them that they can?
Yeah, well, that's a great question, Peter. Well, I mean, first of all, how can we assure them? I mean, from a legal perspective, there's all the NDAs and all that kind of thing, so they know that. And we've been a trusted provider for a long time. But the things that it's not so much their data that we're looking for, it's their processes, right? So, and because it's not always the case that a customer has all of their existing business processes documented. So that's the first thing that we'll ask them to say, hey, if you haven't documented that already, do a first draft, and then we'll sit down with you and we'll fine tune it and so forth. But that's the key thing, is because we need to better understand exactly how they want to how they do things today and what their objectives are and all that kind of stuff. So we have a pretty structured methodology where we'll go through and it starts right even before we're there. It's to tell the customer, hey, this is what you have to do to prepare for us when we're going to show up, and this is what we're going to do afterwards.
So what is the interface like with other warehouse systems or optimization systems, WMS, for example, ERP? Is it sitting across that, or does it slot in next to it? How does it work?
Well, the yard is, again, always historically been in between everything. It doesn't really generate anything. It doesn't originate anything, right? So we have very extensive APIs, REST APIs, and so forth, but we're very flexible. We can receive right down to this like CSV type files if necessary. But we've got a fairly sophisticated mechanisms to take data from other systems. And that will usually involve an ERP, and especially on the booking side, we're looking for purchase orders. So that usually comes from the ERP system. On the warehousing side of things, there's all kinds of information we can get as well. Like, for example, on the booking side of things, if we want to be aware of hot product, if the warehouse can tell us that, hey, we're actually low, inventory wise, we're low on these products. So then as dynamically as the customer is keying in that purchase order, we're recognizing, here's a SKU that we've just been told we're, low inventory on. We'll up the priority of that to make sure it gets fast-tracked. TMS, we do integrate with transport management systems as well. On the yard side, as we've been talking a lot about goods in. The other half of the operation is outbound, right? So more often than not, that we'll execute to a plan that's been provided to us by the customer's TMS system. So usually that's like, okay, here's all the deliveries this is the equipment that we'll need for it. And this is when we meet. And generally, this is where we want to load that vehicle. And this is when we need to leave by to meet the obligations of the customer. So those are the key areas that we fit in. So we need to play nice with everyone because we're.
But it feels like you're kind of, in a way, plugging a bit of a black hole that exists to talk about a lot at logistics business about end-to-end visibility. We talk about from point of production, point of consumption, and everything is visible. It's possibly not the case, or hasn't always traditionally been the case. There is that little area. We decided before we recorded, we're not going to call it the Wild West. There's still an area where great optimization should and could take place.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very narrow gap. Right. So it doesn't matter, the depth or the width of it, but it is a black hole of sorts.
Yeah.
And again, I mean, if it wasn't there, we wouldn't exist as a company.
Mm-hmm.
And fortunately for us, it does exist.
Indeed. Yes. Long may our customers' problems exist.
Exactly.
Otherwise, what are we doing here?
Exactly.
Yes. So you're effectively eliminating these silos, which we touched on earlier in the conversation. And making everything a lot more joined up, a lot more visible. That's job done, right?
Yeah. I mean, it makes for an interesting day.
It really does. So where do we go from here, Greg? What are your ambitions?
Actually, I'm glad you mentioned that, Peter. We did a kind of a pre-launch of a new product coming out. We did here in the UK. It was actually in Birmingham as well, right? 3 weeks ago.
Yep. At the time of recording.
And that product is called, it's our C3 Hive product, but it's our catalyst release. And what some of the interesting things of that catalyst release, it is we're venturing into the route management side of things. So right now, a lot of our customers have routing requirements that are not quite sophisticated enough for their TMS, but yet it's kind of related to their yard operations.
Right.
So we're adding a lot more value to our customers in that area. And then just in general, I didn't mention a lot about our product C3 Hive. I did talk about how we deal with drivers, but it is somewhat of an ecosystem of all of our customers, hauliers and different suppliers. And so we're really going to be leveraging that ecosystem, if you will, in the future. And part of it is this new Catalyst release, which has some of the routing functionality, which we just we gave some pre-launch on.
Okay, and I was wondering whether these innovations that you're introducing to the market, have you looked at the state of the art survey and realized there's a gap to plug there?
Well, interesting question. Our current survey is the state of dock and yard. So we didn't actually go beyond the yard. Uh-huh. So that observation wasn't made from the survey, but maybe next year's survey, we'll talk more about the first level of extremities of the yard.
Extends outside of the
the first level of extensions of the yard.
Talking about the survey, was anything that surprised you in there?
Again, it was, like I said before, didn't necessarily surprise me, It disappointed me. We just found that there still is so much manual operation in the yard. And like I mentioned earlier, it shows up in the survey that there's clearly the silver bullet, magic wand, whatever you want to call it, syndrome out there, where operators are saying, yes, we would like to have a system in place, but we don't actually have plans to put that system in place. So, we've tried to help companies. We've got RFP kits out there and so forth, because we know that a lot of the customers we deal with, put a system like that in place, it's going to need to have a very coordinated effort. There'll probably be substantial budget involved as well. So to do that, you need to be structured. You have to have a structured purchasing process. So you're going to have to go out to the market with a proper request for proposal, all these kind of things. So we're trying to help, but it's somewhat frustrating, I guess, to say that, of the 80% of the people that wanted to have a system, only 20% have plans to do that.
Yeah. And will you be benchmarking the survey so that you could just see how those parameters are shifting? Yeah,
well, we have. And in 2026, we do, in the current survey, we're actually refer back to the delta between last year. So we intend on doing another one next year. And so we'll now have 3 years of history on that.
Great, 3 years of history. Now I'm going to extend forward beyond that. 5 years into the future, what would the dock of the future, dock and yard of the future look like? Well, ideally and practically, and also how would you want it to look?
What's next in logistics? We're asking the experts. In our Crystal Ball segment, industry leaders share their predictions for the future.
Well, I think one of the things, because we're already having customers have us get involved in pilot projects they're doing with autonomous trucks. So we're going to see a lot more autonomous trucks in the yard. So trucks driving around without a driver, or with a person in the truck, but not a driver per se. That's going to be happening much more in the future. I think there's going to be a lot more automation on the dock as well. So I think we're going to see, a lot of the bookings are going to be originated by systems, probably AI on one side, talking to, there's going to be a lot of agentic type things happening.
Sure.
I'm certain of that. We haven't really positioned ourselves in any way yet because I don't think the dust has settled around agentic AI. It's tough to take a stand in terms of, we're going to invest in that. I mean, I can think back just 5 months ago, like what we thought would be a good application of AI. And it's like, geez, that we would have totally missed the mark if we did that. So
Absolutely.
I think we wanted to just settle a bit before we realize, okay, that's the area where we're going to put our resources to maximize, to leverage AI as much as we can. But without a doubt, there's going to be a lot of AI agents talking to each other, and which we're totally receptive to. I mean, we're welcoming that. So I think that's going to be a big benefit for, I think, the hauliers of our customers, because right now our customers have kind of pushed that work over to them. They were doing it in the past. Now the haulier has to do that data entry. I think that's going to go away. And just the overall optimization, I think, is just going to get better and better.
Just to finish then, Greg, if there was sort of a first step that you would, a customer needs to take to optimize their yard, what would you say that should be?
Well, I mean, I think the very first thing they need to do is just have a clear picture of what they're doing now.
Mm-hmm.
And then that will give them, I think, a good starting point to say where they need to go from there. And then, start reaching out to some of the vendors out there to see what's in the market. I mean, obviously, I'd like them to come to C3 and we could do a demonstration of our, at least give a company a good idea of what's available to them. And then, like I said, they'll need to do some kind of a structured purchasing process. I mean, we can help them with that as well. Oftentimes we see that companies, they kind of know what they're doing, but they don't really know, which again is not the case in the warehouse and in other areas, but in the yard.
Yeah, they need a hand to hold.
Yeah, exactly. So we're there.
You got your hands out, ready to be held.
Yep, we do.
Greg, Braun, it's a great pleasure talking to you today on Logistics Business Conversations. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thanks a lot for inviting me, Peter. It's been a pleasure.
Bye for now.
Bye-bye.